Check, check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Mic check, 1, 2. Check, check, 1, 2. Mic check, 1, 2. Microphone going in here or podium? Podium to start.
We okay to get started? Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. So nice to have you here today. Appreciate you taking the time to join us either online or in person. So we always have a career panel and made up of alum to share some stories about what they're doing. So we're going to get started with our show and tell and some advice. So if you're online or if you're in person, feel free to ask questions of the panelists as they're up. We have enough time for that, so that will be fine. And our first speaker today is Crystal Jolly, who is Assistant Director at Detroit Public Library. Just Assistant Manager, pardon me, I gave you a promotion. So you want to come up? Thank you. Okay. Thank you for your promotion. Okay. All right. Oh, let me grab it.
So hello, everyone. My name is Crystal Jolly, as Ms. Kim Schroeder said, and I am an assistant manager and children's librarian at Parkman Branch of the Detroit Public Library. And what I do is I help manage the daily operations of the library of about 16 staff, and we have a service area of about 30,000 patrons. And I'm also a Great Start collaborative Wayne consultant. And so what I do is take programs that are offered in Wayne County, the data, and I put it into a family online calendar so that families in Wayne County can have easy access to programs in Wayne County that are free or of low cost to them. And so I did graduate from Wayne State School of Library Information Sciences. That's what it was called at the time, in 2012. And I have had a journey into urban public librarianship that I think is worth sharing with you. And what I hope that you gain from my moment of talking is that you decide to consider urban public librarianship, so working in an urban public library, and if not that, at the least, just see the value in this kind of work, okay? Make sure, did it change? Okay. Good. So before I talk about my journey, I think it's important for people to understand what am I talking about when I'm saying urban public libraries. So this is from my experience working in an urban public library, and also the conversations that I've had with other librarians across the country, so like in Chicago and Philadelphia. And so there are also some common features. So one thing is serving a diverse community, and that means understanding diversity, and not just racial or ethnic, but it's also cultural, it's linguistic, and serving people from with different abilities. So as an urban public library, we always have to think about having the dexterity to deal with the complexities of serving a diverse population. I'm sorry if you can't really see it, it's dark. So if you need me to say something over, I can do that for you, and feel free to share your questions with me at the end, okay? So thirdly, there is this idea of striving for equity. Hopefully you can see the picture, so maybe I'll talk about that because it's probably what you can see. And so when we talk about striving for equity, it's this idea of meeting people where they are, understanding who they are, and providing what it is they need to be successful. And so what I want to show you right now is this video about our Watch and Learn program at Parkman that was established in 2017. And essentially what we did is we created a pop-up space in a laundromat only about a half a mile away from the library. But it means a lot to those people, to our people in the community, because it takes a lot of time to arrange to go to a library when you have to wash your clothes, you have to make sure your children are dropped off at school. There's a lack of transportation, and so even though it's a half a mile away, it means a lot for families that they can easily find out what the library is doing, read stories to their children, and just do it while they're waiting for their clothes to wash or dry. So I just need assistance with...
My name is Stacy Lauren, and I'm the program coordinator of the Watch and Learn program in Detroit. The Watch and Learn program creates pop-up learning spaces and laundromats, providing patrons and community members access to educational material and programs. Since the launch of this program, I've seen relationships grow among community members, small businesses, local nonprofits, and national organizations. In fact, the laundromat owners themselves have become our strongest allies, and they take immense pride in these spaces.
My name is Omar Lorenzen. I'm the owner of Coinless Laundry. Our laundromat actually is located in the Detroit, city of Detroit. Poverty levels are very, very high within the city. And so having this here, I think is awesome because the parents can bring their kids. The kids can engage with people who could help them, with educational games and things that'll help them grow and learn, etc. It was in conjunction with our neighborhood library, which we thought was pretty cool. And anything that's an opportunity to kind of give kids access to information, technology, just any type of positive encouragement, I think is a plus.
My name is Crystal Jolly. I'm a children's librarian at Parkman Branch. This program is wonderful because it's an opportunity to mingle with the families, mingle with the children, and find out what their interests are and promote the programs that we have at the library. What's so interesting about this program is that, the laundromat is right down the street from Parkman, and so even though people are close to the library, they might have busy lives, and so this gives us an opportunity to meet the families where they are and for them to, again, get a chance to mingle and get to know us. So it has been an amazing experience, and we look forward to continuing this in some shape, form, or fashion.
I'm Justin Johannan, the manager of Fit and Fold Laundromat, and Libraries Without Borders has been here for about 2.5 months, and they set up computers in our laundromat. This neighborhood is one of the poorest zip codes in all of Michigan. We live next to two big, huge apartment buildings and I'll say no one has the internet in there. So Libraries Without Borders set up some computers and different programs on the computers so kids could get internet, help them with school, reading, build up their reading skills. 80% of the neighborhood drops out by 10th grade. So just to start getting kids while they're younger and just really focus on their education and just everything to help them grow strong. Libraries Without Borders has definitely helped.
And what I think Wash and Learn does, as well as organizations like Central Detroit, and the reason we chose to come here is Brilliant Detroit, is there is hope because the people here are beautiful. They want what's best for their kids, but they need it in the neighborhood in a way that's easy for them to get to and access, and that's what this does.
Hi, my name is Renee Solomon. I have been a resident in this neighborhood for over 40 years. We have a lot of young parents with children that need the kind of help that these agencies are bringing to the neighborhood. I volunteered, I cooked and read to the children, and I know that a lot of these young parents and families with children need this.
My name is Leola Stafford, and I live in this community. I brought my daughter Gracie here. So she loved doing the arts and craft, and they back there painting dinosaurs.
I'm Madison Paisner, and I'm an intern for the Wash and Learn program for Libraries Without Borders. I'm someone who's always loved reading and put a lot of value in having access to books, so I think that this idea of taking idle time at a laundromat and giving kids something to do, it's been really successful.
One day, I asked a man standing outside of Fit and Fold Laundromat where all the kids hang out around here. He looked at me and said, without skipping a beat, the laundromat.
Hi, I'm Brian Wallace. I serve as President and CEO of Coin Laundry Association. The ability of Wash and Learn to make educational, literacy, entertainment, and other much needed resources available for those families visiting our laundromats every week is a potent combination. We've got a great opportunity with Wash and Learn and hopefully other programs much like it to bridge that gap and use laundromats as a way of connecting communities with the resources that they need the most.
Okay, so what I want to emphasize about this
You
video,
write for many reasons. Grammarly provides suggestions based.
no problem. So what I wanted to emphasize about that video is, again, striving for equity. So meeting families where they are and providing that extra layer of support so that they can have transformational experiences. So that's another common feature of serving in an urban public library. The last feature that I want to talk about is that I found that's common is this idea that urban public libraries meet city goals. So for example, Mayor Duggan recently gave the city a state of the city address, and he talked about two things. Detroit has the highest unemployment rate as a city in the country, and it also has the highest poverty rate for a city in the country. So when we do programs at the library, at the forefront of our mind, we're thinking about, okay, how can we support city goals? How can we reduce those two things? So we provide workforce development options. We have like this huge binder with hundreds of job opportunities and workforce opportunities for families. Even with something like a teen advisory board, when I have teens when they do programs, I'm always thinking about, are they developing skills to be able to talk in front of people confidently, be able to solve problems in working groups, and that's what I'm thinking about, is them getting skills that they can use when they join the workforce or become college students. So the next thing I want to talk about is my journey into urban public librarianship. And so what I want to emphasize is that my journey did not happen overnight when I graduated from Wayne State School of Library Information Science. I knew I wanted to work for the Detroit Public Library, but I needed experience and I needed to gain my knowledge and confidence as a librarian. So I took every opportunity that I could working, and it was a progressive journey. So I was fortunate enough to work as an intern for Plymouth District Library, and then I moved up to substitute librarian, and then I became a part-time children's librarian, and then full-time. So it just progressed. So if you don't feel that things are going wrong, if you don't get the position that you want off immediately, just strive and work for that. Stay focused on your goal, and it will happen. And so then I eventually became a librarian at the Detroit Public Library. and was promoted to assistant manager. And then recently, I also became a consultant for Great Start Wayne. And what I want you to take away from this slide as well is that working as an urban public librarian is not just being inside of these, four walls, like brick and mortar. It's this idea that you are really striving for equity in any kind of way. So for me as a consultant, I do my work at home sometimes. I could be at a staff meeting, I'm doing just all these different things that I'm doing, but it's still, I would consider it as work, urban librarianship, public urban librarianship work. So keep that in mind that your opportunities are limitless. Okay. So now I want to talk about the challenges. And I consider these challenges to be things that keep me up at night. I'll be honest. One thing that is limited is resources. Because I am the assistant manager and children's librarian, I'm wearing several hats all the time. So I have limited time, and I've noticed that before when I was just a children's librarian, I had more time to just sit with families and mingle with them and talk with them. But because I'm also managing, I don't have as much time. So I have to be very intentional about the interaction that I have with families. Of course, I want to show them that I care, but I also want to let them know that we have all these great programs and to continue to come back. So it's about being strategic and then prioritizing. A second challenge is removing barriers for families. So I won't talk much about it now because I do believe that those pictures that I will show you later shows programs where we are trying to remove those barriers. But it's a never-ending, it's something that's always at the forefront of my mind too, is like how can we remove barriers such as transportation? And so you'll see that in future slides of programs that we've done. And then lastly, that's the challenge for me, is measuring impact. And I think this goes in hand with having limited time. Because I don't have a lot of time, I know I need to work better with finding quantitative measurements, right, with the impact that we have in the community. So for example, if we have a computer class and it's a group of people and they complete this 6-week course, has this course really helped them? Which skills did they develop? Has it led to them getting a job in the city? And so those are the kinds of things that I want to be able to communicate to our community as far as our impact. So I'm working on that one. Okay, so I'm sorry, we are right slide? Okay, so challenges. All right, so you know what I want to do is go back to why urban public librarianship is important for me. In fact, I'll just speak about it, no need to go back. So I chose urban public librarianship because I felt it was a way for me to give back to my city. I am a native Detroiter, born and raised in Detroit, and so it's really dear to my heart that I'm able to live, work, and play in Detroit and give back to my community. And then secondly, I want to be a positive example for the youth in my community. I want them to see a librarian who looks like them, to understand that no matter which challenges or adversities you have, you can be a librarian. The sky is the limit. So that is why I chose this field. Okay, so hopefully we're on rewards, right? Okay, good. So let's get to the rewards. This job is very rewarding. The most rewarding aspect of what I do is building relationships with families, community partners, and just seeing the professional and personal growth that take place over time. So you should see a picture of a young gentleman helping a little boy at a computer. So when I met him, when I first started working at the Detroit Public Library, he was very shy. He wouldn't talk to me much. He would mingle with his friends, and then he would leave the library. That was his day. But as we developed a rapport with each other, I invited him to join the Teen Advisory Board. And then what that led to about a year later is him leading our online game tournament, so helping our little children to create accounts and play games. And so, of course, this is something that you just can't measure, but when you see it, it just makes you, it warms your heart to see the growth that patrons and community members have. So here are just some, some library programs that we have. We offer many, so what I want to highlight at the bottom is you'll see some young ladies in ballet attire. In 2017, we had a summer ballet and reading program, and it was done in partnership with Abigail School of Dance, Metro Detroit Book Author Society. And what we did is remove barriers for youth in Detroit to have access to the arts. We provided instruction, so they learned classical ballet. We provided the attire, we provided the books. So all they had to do was show up and get a good quality experience of learning ballet. And so these are the kind of things that we do to remove those barriers and enrich children's lives with the programs that we offer. The next slide is just more programs that we offer, and I just want to highlight the family field trips. So a barrier for a lot of families in Detroit is transportation. And me personally, I know taking the bus that our transportation system could be a lot better. It could be improved. And so for a family, think about taking them to Belle Isle, for example. You have 3 children, you have limited funds, you have limited time. Trying to get to Belle Isle, for example, to this wonderful park, it just takes too much energy. It's too many barriers. So what we do is we have family field trips every year. We've partnered with Michigan State University. They provide a bus. They pick us up from Parkman. They take us to the Belle Isle for their Michigan Science Expo, and then they bring us back. And you will see a picture of a father with his son, and they're looking out into the Detroit River. And so that's what we do. These are the kind of moments that we create with the programs that we offer, where a father and his son can look out into the river and then also have a great learning experience without worrying about barriers. And then last but not least is a slide, because I'm almost done. It's just a phrase that I want to leave with you, is that urban public libraries they provide the extra layer of support so that those who are most in need have experience. They have transformational experiences that they wouldn't have otherwise. And then I want to just talk a little bit about these different boxes you see. So this is called Transform Libraries. It's an initiative with the American Library Association. And the very top box, it talks about libraries transform how and why, is because students who read throughout the summer, in the fall, they are more likely to end up on the honor roll. And that's great. But what about the child that has had negative experiences with reading? They've been struggling with reading. They don't have the support. At our library, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to work toward that goal. We're going to provide you with intensive summer reading support in the summer. We've hired teachers to come in, and for 2 hours a week, 6 days a week throughout the summer, Monday through Thursday, they work with the certified teacher who specializes in reading recovery. So now this child is building positive relationships with reading. They are being successful at reading. And then we're giving them prizes for reading too. I mean, we're just really supporting them. And so the goal is that they will be able to be that student who is on the honor roll if they aren't already. But we're providing those extra layers of support. So hopefully that after you've heard my presentation today, you'll see that urban public librarianship is something that you should consider, and if not, just understand the value. So thank you, Wayne State School of Information Sciences, for having me, and thank you all for listening. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you again, Crystal. Now we have Sean McCann. Oh, thank you. Associate professor at assistant. Sorry, I'm getting everybody's job title wrong. Yeah, I'm promoting everybody today. So alum of our program, and he works at Oakland University, and he's going to talk about being a faculty member.
Yes. So for this show and tell, I actually chose to focus on the tell part, pretty much exclusively, because I don't have any slides. So, yeah, so I'm Sean McCann. I graduated from Wayne State Library Science Program. It was the Library and Information Science Program back when I was in school in 2003, which means I've been a librarian for 16 years, which is weird, because I still feel like I'm like this new librarian, but I guess that would be empirically false at this point. You know, my career's taken me in different directions. Well, not totally different directions. I've been an academic librarian my entire career, but I've worked at some different places. My first job was at Wayne State, actually, as a web librarian, so I worked on managing the website. I transitioned later into a digital projects librarian, so I was working on mass digitization projects and making that content available to the public and whatnot. I did a stint at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, and as the gaming librarian, so my job was to support video games and video game research on campus, which was really cool and fun. And the weird thing was, I went to library school because I wanted to be a reference librarian, but I've never been one. and I came back to Wayne State as a digital projects librarian again, and then now I'm at Oakland University, where I'm the business and web services librarian. But the interesting twist on that, which is what I'm going to talk about, is that I'm a librarian with faculty status, which isn't totally rare, but it is kind of unusual, and it's the first time I've had faculty status anywhere. And so I'm going to try to talk about some of the things that I find, different and interesting about that status and what it entails, because it was something that I wasn't even familiar with when I was a library science student, and, going to get a career, sort of like the implications of being a faculty member. Let's see. A bit about my current job. So it's a very typical librarian job in many ways. I'll echo Crystal. I'll say I have to wear a lot of different hats. So some of the things I have to work on, as the business librarian, I'm the liaison to the business school, which means I work mostly with business school students and faculty. I do a lot of teaching, so sort of information literacy sessions for various classes, showing them library resources that they should be using on specific projects, talking about why they should use them, things like that. I do a lot of what we call research consultations, which is sort of like an in-depth reference session. So I do half-hour appointments with students. They come in, we go over whatever they're, maybe it's a undergraduate student working on a class assignment, maybe it's a graduate student working on a research project, whatever, and we just talk through things, resources and whatnot. It's all sorts. It's more than just showing library resources. A lot of times it's showing how to download a data set and things that they can tools they can use to manipulate that and get the information they're looking for. Whatever, librarian stuff, and of course there's a collection development sort of dimension to all that too, making resource recommendations, buying books and ebooks and all that stuff. One of the other hats I wear is I'm the web services librarian, which means I manage the website and some of our other web presences. So I'm responsible for sort of updating, changing, modifying web pages on the site. Probably going to do a website redesign here soon, so I'll be heading that up, and I have to head up a team of people that not really do the development, but they kind of advise the development of the site. And then the last thing, I manage the discovery tool, Primo. We call it Library One Search, so that's just another hat I have to wear. And all that's just typical library jobs that you're going to find in an academic library. Where the faculty status part comes in and kind of changes things is so because I have faculty status, my actual job title, even though I call myself the business and web services librarian, on the books at OU, my job title is assistant professor, and that's what I am. What does that mean? Well, the first and most important aspect of that status is that I have an 8-month contract, so I'm actually off during the summer for 4 months, which is amazing and awesome. It means I only work 2/3 of the year. I get another third to just be lazy, hang out on the beach. No, because I don't like to go to the beach. No, that's not true at all. You get that summer off because you have all these other duties, and you need time to work on those things, and I'll talk about them as I go along. But another aspect of that weird sort of 8-month schedule is it complicates work. And so things that were surprising to me is I'm very used to coming in and doing project-based work. We always have some project going and whatever. Well, because I'm only there 2/3 of the year, if we get to the end of the winter semester and the project isn't done, it's just kind of tabled until I come back in the fall. We don't touch it, which was just weird and strange. And I feel well, maybe I should come in the summer and work on it. And it's just kind of no, work on other things during the summer, and we'll just get back to this. So it's just I guess where I was always pressured to make sure we're completing projects in the most in the quickest manner we could. I don't feel that pressure here. It's just kind of there's disruptions. A good example of a way that it also makes work awkward is one of the things we did recently is open up a makerspace, and I spearheaded that. I put the team together that investigated, could we do it? Where would we put it in the library? What technology would we include? Who's going to staff it? All these things. It was accepted. We renovated a room, put in all the technology and whatnot, and then like my relationship to it just kind of ended because, I mean, it was like my baby, and then like I couldn't work on it anymore because only being there for 2/3 of the year, they needed other people to manage it because it's gonna be open the whole year round, and I also I don't supervise any staff and things like that, so it's like created it and just sent it out into the world to see what happened. So a weird aspect to the work. I'm used to having more ownership over like projects and things. Another weird aspect is like making my own schedule. I have no contractual obligation to work like 40 hours or 37.5 hours a week. There's literally nothing in my contract that says I have to, like, when I have to be at the library and for how long. But there's still an expectation that I will be at the library and I will be doing my job. You are expected to act as a professional. I should be fulfilling all my obligations and whatnot, but kind of like how I manage that time is a little bit up to me. And my colleagues, right? Because like they depend on me being there to answer business questions and things like, so they can refer students to the business library and whatnot. So you have to keep your colleagues in mind, and you really need to keep your colleagues in mind because they're a big part of how you're evaluated in terms of like whether or not you're doing your job or not. But again, no strict guidelines on when I have to be there, but sort of this collegial atmosphere where there's an expectation that I will be doing my work and whatnot. So if you have really bad time management skills, it might not be the type of career for you. But that's not totally true, because I don't know that I have the best time management skills. It just means I end up doing a lot of work at home and things. Just the status itself, being a faculty member, has been different. Because I have worked at other institutions and whatnot, I felt like being an academic librarian always was kind of seen as a supporting role to the faculty on campus. You're there to support them. You're in a lot of ways working for them or working and whatnot. But when you have the faculty status, you're actually on par with them, and I feel that way at Oakland. You're treated with I don't want to say more respect, but there is something different. Maybe I can't put my finger on exactly what that feeling is, but it does feel different to me. You end up working on a lot of the same committees and things together, and they value your input. They actively look for librarian input, which was different. I always felt like in a lot of other jobs, the librarian was kind of like this afterthought, like, oh, we did this thing, and then you're in the library and you find out that happened, and you're like, like, how are we going to support that? But we're more like actively involved, and that kind of feeds into another aspect of being a faculty member, is that there's this shared governance sort of aspect to it on the campus itself, and that the faculty is very influential in what the campus does. But even within the library itself, we get to help manage the library in a lot of ways as the faculty body. So, for instance, when we want to hire a new librarian, a new faculty librarian, we put together the search committee, we vet all the candidates, we bring them to campus, we conduct the interviews and whatnot, and then in the end, we make our recommendations to the dean, and then the dean has the final say, but they're not really involved in that process at all. It's the faculty that kind of put that all together, which has been different. I'm used to having a search committee that's consisted of administrators and librarians, and librarians have input, but not to the degree that you do as a faculty librarian. We get to teach credit-bearing courses in the library. We're a full academic unit, so we currently have one 4-credit, 4-credit, like the number 4, not just 4-credit. It is for credit, but it's 4 credits. Writing intensive sort of information literacy gen ed course that we teach every single semester. It's an online course, which is also another interesting dimension to it, but we kind of rotate through who teaches it, and you're working directly with undergrads through the whole semester long, which was something totally new to me. I do a lot of teaching, but it's always been in the form of these like one-off sessions in different classes. My mom's Sicilian, so I talk with my hands a lot. I don't look Sicilian at all. What else? Some of the interesting requirements of the job, though, too. When you become an academic librarian, you can fully expect to be evaluated on a lot more than just your job. Like, that's always going to be a dimension of what you're evaluated on, but there's always also some other dimensions to that, whether they'll call it like professional achievement, and they'll have some kind of rules as to what you should be doing for professional achievement. That may be just things like attending conferences and stuff, but it may also be like presenting at conferences or hosting workshops or attending workshops, different things. And then there's usually some sort of service component, which usually means like serving on committees for the American Library Association and things like that. As a faculty member, I feel like it's more strict and more like instead of just professional development, it's scholarship. Like I have to be researching, I have to publish. So scholarship, it would include publishing in peer-reviewed journals, publishing in professional literature, doing conference presentations. There's a bunch of different things, and it's going to vary from institution to institution, but that scholarship and publishing component is a big part of it, and having some sort of research agenda, like things, research area that you're going to focus in, which is kind of nice as a librarian, because at least speaking from someone at Oakland University, it's like, we're pretty open to what you want to research as long as you can somehow pull that back and tie it to librarianship. So it does make it a little more flexible. I like to research web accessibility. I love doing web design that, makes things more accessible to people with disabilities, for instance. That's one of my areas. And I do a lot with information literacy in terms of like source recognition. Undergraduate students don't always seem to understand what it is that they're citing. So one of my research studies, we were looking at presenting e-journals and e-books to students and then seeing how they cited them. And without fail, they cite them like their websites. They just author, date, title, copy and paste the URL from the address bar, things like that. But yeah, there's this big, scholarship becomes an important part, so that means, that sort of like publish or perish mentality, enters play as a librarian, I guess, and puts some pressure on you. Let's see. Which ties into, again, that evaluation piece of like how you're being evaluated. My peers are the people that evaluate me and recommend me for promotion or contract extensions and things like that, which is why you don't want to not come to work, even though you're not contractually obligated to any particular hours. You want to maintain really collegial relationships with everybody that you work with. You want to be doing your scholarship, and then you also have to do a service component, which I said, generally in academic librarianship has always been sort of like working for different professional committees, but with faculty status at OU, it also means doing a lot of service to the campus. So because the library is its own academic unit, there are all these contractually mandated committee appointments that have to be filled. So there's like this, the University Senate has a position for some library faculty that the librarian has to be serving in at all times. We have committees that govern like instruction and things like that that have these mandated positions for librarians. And then there's all sorts of other committees that just expect librarian representation. I personally I've served on the assessment committee, which looks at all the programs on campus and sees what they're doing in terms of assessing their learning objectives. So I look and see like, okay, mechanical engineering says they have these 3 learning objectives. They say they're assessing it through these assignments. I look at that and make sure that like they really are assessing what they're supposed to be assessing and whatnot. So you feel more important, right? Like it's a really cool role to have. Like I'm telling mechanical engineering what to do. I have a business degree. And I serve on academic conduct, so I get to hear all the cases of plagiarism and cheating and things. And as a librarian, it's really awesome to be on that committee because we're really good at rooting out like plagiarism and stuff. Or when students say they like, oh, I did a web, like, I found something on the web, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, open up your computer, show me how you did the search. Let's see what you found. And inevitably, it's like a place where they can like buy assignment answers and stuff like that. That's a really big problem going forward, is this like sort of there's an entire industry around cheating in college. So let's see. So yeah, that's my job in a nutshell, and kind of how the faculty status plays into that. And in many ways, it is just an academic librarian job, but there is sort of these extra things on top of it, or it feels that way. If I had to give some sort of like career advice, if people are interested in like pursuing a job as a faculty librarian or just an academic librarian, some things I would say is definitely figure teaching out, do teaching, write a teaching philosophy for yourself, write a teaching statement, figure out your teaching philosophy. That is important. I feel like instruction is probably half of my job at least, and it feels like it's part of like the most important part of my job. And it's changed. I shouldn't say it's changing. It has changed a lot. I mean, it used to be that librarians just did a lot of standing up in front of the class and showing like, this is the database and this is how you use ands and ors, and you should use this because it's better than Google. Just, you know, lecturing students. But really, now it's changed. It's more about, it's not so much in the mechanics of searching, it's about evaluating the information that you find, which is really important in today's world of like, fake news and whatever else. But teaching students these skills to be able to evaluate information and really explaining why subscription resources and library resources are important to the work that they'll be doing if they're not buying their essays online. Let's see, what else? And I think it's just important, having served on a lot of search committees in my life and looking at people applying for these jobs in academic libraries, finding some way to differentiate yourself from everyone else. You get an MLIS and you apply for that job, but everybody that's applying for that job has an MLIS. So showing me some skills that you have that that are unique, or teaching is a good one. Any kind of technology skills go a long way, whatever those may be. Even if it is basic web editing, can be really important, just because it shows me that you can edit your subject guide that you have to take care of. That you're not going to be helpless and not be able to put a link on your subject guide or something. What else? Research data is a big one. We're getting more into supporting research data in the libraries, how to find it, how to process it, how to archive it, and best practices around it, all sorts of things. So that's another big area. And then in a couple of out there points, I would say read the book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, by Shoshana Zuboff. She's a researcher out of Harvard, the Harvard Business School. She talks about this sort of changing nature of capitalism in the United States, moving to this surveillance model, using companies like Google and Facebook and whatnot, and talking about how, we're their raw materials as well as their customers in a way. Anyway, and they get a lot of value out of our data. And I just see, I read this book and I look at it and go, this is such a huge opportunity for libraries in general to give people this private space to explore information and whatnot. But just read it. It's a great read. And then pay attention to things like automation, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, because a lot of job duties of librarians are going to be automated in the future. I think we don't think of white-collar jobs as automatable, but they're going to be. It's just going to happen. So keeping up to date on that and staying ahead of it I think is really important. I'm not trying to, I know I feel like I ended it on a downer. Everybody's you're going to be replaced by robots. I don't think that's true, as long as we're proactive about it, right? Which has nothing to do with being a faculty librarian, but it's just an area of interest I have. So, that's my whole spiel. Does anybody have questions for me? Nothing? Yeah, Shoshana Zuboff, Z-U-B-O-V, I believe. It's called The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. Yep, we have librarians. We call internally we call them part-time librarians. They do a lot of they work on the reference desk. They work on special projects, and they're classified as special lecturers. But they don't have the same faculty status, and they don't have the same expectations of publish or perish and serving on committees and things. I had a video. I had a visual. Oh. Yeah, sorry. Thanks.
That was really interesting. Thanks, Sean. Next up, we have Olivia Olson, who's a community engagement librarian at Troy Public Library.
Thank you for having me. I just want to get a kind of feel for the room. Are there any prospective public librarians in here? All right, maybe I'll be able to convince you over. So, I graduated from Wayne in 2011, and when I graduated, I worked 2 part-time jobs. I actually worked as a bookmobile librarian at the Rochester Hills Library, And I also applied and got a job at the time. It was called Technology Librarian at the Troy Public Library. And if you don't know the history of Troy Public Library, 2011 was a rough year. The library nearly closed due to some political infighting, and it's a long story, but it nearly closed, which if you visit TPL today would just be baffling to you because it's such a busy library and it's really important to the community, I think. So before I started, I applied for a part-time technology librarian job. And when I was in the interview, I talked so much about how I loved teenagers and working with teens that Kathy Russ, who's the director, sort of said, "Oh, do you want to be our teen librarian?" And I said, "Sure." So luckily, I was able to work as their teen librarian. So I worked there part-time for a few years, and then I was promoted to full-time teen librarian. And the teens in our community were very hungry for programs because for nearly a year before I started there were no teen programs. So everything had kind of shut down in anticipation of closing. So it was a sort of an overwhelming part-time job when I first got it, but it was exciting because there was a lot of opportunity for innovation. So when I started, there were no teen programs. So I started a teen advisory board, probably like how you guys have one, which I think is sort of a necessary staple for a public library. It invites kids in to the library to give them a sense of ownership over the programs that we do. And it also makes sure that we know that we're doing programs that they actually want, not programs that we think they want. And I mention all of that because I started as our community engagement librarian in January, and reaching out to the community and bringing them into the library and figuring out what kind of programs different populations in our community want has been super important because we don't have an outreach department at Troy. It's just me and whoever other librarians feel like helping me at the time. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. So I started in January, I don't know if I said that, as this community outreach librarian. And I knew I wanted to do more than just outreach. So how I had thought of outreach, and I think how many people think of it in public libraries, is deliveries of books to homebound seniors. And that seemed to be just the sort of reigning definition of what an outreach librarian did. But what me and some other librarians, what we decided to do was to sort of sit down together and break down what we thought were underserved populations in our community. And based on census data, based on anecdotal evidence, because we've been working the reference desk for so long, and we see based on what kind of books get checked out, and also which programs that we do are heavily attended at the library and what people seemed hungry for in the community. But all of that was no replacement for actually reaching out to community organizations and seeing what people in the community wanted. So I would suggest if anyone decides to be and community engagement, probably in academic libraries too, could probably benefit from this also. But from the public library standpoint, that meant actually reaching out to other organizations. So we did improve our services to seniors, and part of that was going to American House or to other assisted living homes and talking to their book clubs. And I actually attend the American House book club. They have a monthly club every month. And we figured out what kind of books they wanted. And there's sort of a, I don't want to say maybe it is ageism, but there's an idea, I think, in librarians that older people aren't comfortable using technology. I have found that to be completely false. The American House people were really hungry to learn about the apps that we provide. They really wanted to know about how to download things and have us just go through and show them how to do that. And I wouldn't have thought that. I mean, I'm guilty of that. I would not have thought that myself unless I actually reached out to them and asked them. So that's an example of sort of supplementing our services to seniors. Also, I reached out to the community center in Troy. I think the danger of public libraries sometimes is to become very insulated in what you already do. And it seemed like the community center and the library had a lot of overlap in the programs that we do, but we didn't know that because we didn't know what the community center did. So we sort of undertook this research project to figure out what they do and found ways to create complementary programs. So we did a series of mindfulness programs, sort of meditation classes, and then they did yoga classes. And so the patrons that were interested in our classes, we could sort of cross-promote all of our programs. So that was good. So 3 populations that we realized we were underserving or that were a challenge. One was what we call emerging adults, so it's like 20-year-old to maybe 35-year-olds. It was tough to get them in. We lose them when they go to college, and then we usually don't get them back until they bring their kids back in, so it was trying to find a way to reach out to that population. We did a few things. One is the form that you see up here. It's the Next 3 Books form. And of course, all ages of adults can use this, but it's a way for people who are too busy to come to the library. They submit this form, they put their name, I don't remember what else is on there, their barcode number, whatever, and what kind of books that they're interested in reading. And we submit a little list, a little personalized list of 3 books, 3 little read-alikes that we think they might like. And it seems like such a simple thing. I swear I've had more people like come to the library and ask for me to thank me. No one ever thanks me. That's not like, no one ever asks for me personally and thanks me for stuff. Maybe that's being a teen librarian for many years, but I'm just kidding. They're very grateful, teens are. But having that personalized connection, and I wonder if that's something also we could think about, is creating personalized connections with our community, especially in terms of like scary robots taking over our job. When you said that, I thought immediately maybe that's why I'm trying to like be friends with everyone in the community, is because it's this real human connection. And another part of that has been actually attending community events, which I think is just incredibly important. Knowing what the events are in the community, which is not easy, it takes work, but having a table at the farmer's market. We have a table, Beaumont has like a baby fair. We got a table there. It's really easy. And the community organizations are always like, oh yeah, the library, sure, you can come. We have a table in the community center. We just sit there for an hour every Thursday, and people are always surprised. We're right next door to the community center. People will say, oh, where's the library? So it's a way of talking to people and kind of like luring them in and getting them to come to programs. So that was another way, because we assumed that target population was not, they didn't have the time to actually come into the library. So we were trying to find ways to do that. We also did a book club at a bar, which I know a lot of libraries are doing. And we also did seasonally trivia programs at Granite City, which is a restaurant in Troy. So we had a Gilmore Girls trivia, and we had like 60 people my age, which I've never seen that happen in a library program before. And it was great because it was something that people wouldn't necessarily expect a library to do. What else? Oh, we felt like we were underserving tweens too. That was another group. They sort of get lost in the shuffle between young kids, which are really well served by our youth services department, and teens, and our teen librarian does a bunch of programs. So it's like that 9 through 12, they seemed like they were hungry for programs. So we started doing sort of like a mini teen advisory board for them, where we do a craft. And then their sense of ownership comes from they vote, or they give them little Post-its, they write down what kind of program they want to see next month, and then they vote on whatever it is. So it's just that little bit of ownership for them, feeling like the library listens to them and cares about what they want, and are actively trying to provide programs for that age group. And it's been going really well. So that's another one. And another way to get tweens in to try to figure out what they want to do. And then this is something that we want to do, that we're working on right now, is we're sort of in the research phase of improving our services to patrons with disabilities, because we don't do much of that. And we do have groups that meet in Troy that we could reach out to and ask them, what kind of programs do you want? What are some of the barriers to coming to the library? I know I've done a couple of tours of the library with some group homes, and their caregivers, or the people who run the group homes, are often afraid of being too loud. So why not do one before the library opens, or on a Friday, because we're closed on Fridays, we could open the library for a couple hours to have them come in and do a program and tour the library and feel like, I mean, we did that for teens, because teens were too loud. So we had them like do after hours programs or something like that. So that's something we're working on. And that just takes reaching out to those groups and saying, what are you guys into? Like, what programs do you want? What would be easy for you to come to? What would be difficult? And then also, we want to increase our services to refugees and immigrants, because we have a really diverse population in Troy and a lot of people who have moved here from other countries. We have a great international language book collection, but we need to do more programming for those groups, and that just takes research again, trying to figure out where Oakland Literacy Council comes to the Troy all the time and asking those volunteers, like, how can we crash like one of your conversation groups and make the conversation about what kind of programs would you be interested, what resources do you need, what's challenging, what can we help with. So that's just a little bit about me and about community engagement librarianship and how great it is. It's a really fun way to learn about the community more. Oh, and I also wanted to mention it's a way to connect departments too, because you probably heard me say I belong to the adult reference department technically, but it's like working with tweens. Where do they fall? Because teens are clearly an adult, but youth services, also serves that age group. So why are we splitting hairs? Like, why don't we just all do programs? And so much of our community is families. Why wouldn't we do all ages programming? And so it's a great way to reach out to different departments too, because even, I don't know if you guys work in libraries now, but it does happen where they sort of segregate, and it's silly, because it's, if it benefits our community to work together, why wouldn't we do that? Do you have any questions for me? Nothing? All right, well, thank you so much for having me.
Olivia, you do have that great international book collection, so are you planning to do any of that immigrant work or programming over the summer, or will that be more the fall? Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, great. And that's common that our communities are getting a bit more diverse. We're starting to get a little less segregated in Metro Detroit, which is good. And so I think it's good for the librarians to brainstorm from different facilities too for what they can do. That's great. And last up, we have Debbie Welsh, who is the media archivist and media production manager at Allied Vaughan. Debbie?
Okay, I hope I don't mess this up. It's a friendly audience. Good. All right, I want to thank Wayne State first and Kim for allowing me to speak today. I wanted to kind of talk about, of course, where I work and what I do, and some tips and tricks on how I deal with my clients. First of all, I work at Allied Vaughan. Allied Vaughan has been in the Detroit area since the 60s. Just to kind of talk about how I do not work in a library, but you can use your archival practices and librarian information and apply those to working in a corporate archive. So Allied Vaughan used to develop motion picture film back in the day, and they noticed a trend change. It was videotape, and so then they started to move away from motion picture film, duplicate and distribute videotape. Then that changed, and it started to work more in the digital CD and DVD fulfillment environment. Then that changed. So now we're in to an environment where we support our clients' content that they create. So we don't create it, they create. Again, I work in a corporate library. I support clients, not patrons. So again, a little bit different world. Let me make sure I can do this right. Is that the next one? Yeah, okay. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about my street creds. I have a bachelor's in fine art, concentration in photography, and I'm a Wayne State grad with my certificate in archival administration. So we talked about earlier about how you don't wake up one day and say, oh, I want to be a librarian. Oh, I want to be an archivist. Sometimes those jobs find you, and so that's exactly what happened to me. I didn't end up being a fine art photographer, world renowned. So I work in a corporate archive, which I really do enjoy. So my job, I think, found me. What does that provide to my clients or my patrons? So even though I have my background in fine art and have my archival certification, I'm able to apply both of those skill sets to my clients going forward because what do they have? They have media, they have paper, they have film, video, photographs, they have media. So I'm able to apply a lot of that history of how to deal with photographs from a media perspective and also apply how to deal with them from an archival perspective as well. Hopefully I changed that again. A lot of times my clients may not know what they want. So again, years of experience, I'm able to listen to them, understand what they need, and then kind of cultivate their path into processing their collection. But what you don't say is the bad word, which is purge. Am I in the right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, don't say the scary word, which is purge. Is purge up there? No, not yet. Okay. All right. I get paid to throw away a lot of my clients' content. You know, I know that sounds kind of scary, but I do. On an average, from a client's perspective, they have stuff, and on an average, I end up only keeping about 10 to 15% of their collection. Now that may sound really scary, but a couple of things. Remember, the client can't keep everything, even though they may want to. They're married to it. You know, this is an experience. They don't want to give this stuff up. But the more stuff they digitize, the more space they take up on their hard drives or their servers, and then more problems they end up having because they have duplicates or lesser types of content. In other words, they might have an element, a piece of a show instead of the final show. So that's why I say I end up pitching most of my clients' content. But you don't say that word. Clients know that they cannot keep everything, so you must ease them into that by using best practices. What I do is I share with them similar sessions or projects that I've worked on. Many times they'll come to Allied Vaughn or me. I'll sit in with a client interview, and they believe that their situation is unique, and it's really not. Everybody has stuff. You know, it might be different, might be a different subject, but it's still stuff. And helping them understand that they don't have to keep it all, and that what is really important to their business, and maybe what kind of isn't so much important to their business. One of our main clients is General Motors, and I use the example that General Motors makes cars, but they also create their history as well. And so I help them curate down all the duplicate copies of their history. It doesn't get rid of the history, but it just helps them work smarter with the content that they end up keeping, the best of the best, so to speak. And this client engagement, this helps set the stage for their confidence in you. You're able then to go into the next client or client meeting and be able to explain to them confidently why it's important to take down 75% of the content, you know, without them kicking you out the door. Use archival terms like collate, curate, and weed. Now, those are terms we all learn in library school, but those are not terms that they understand. So, those are the terms that they will learn to appreciate later. Be an ambassador. The definition of an ambassador is a person who acts as a representative or promoter of a specified activity. So again, your client comes to you and this is their emotion, this is their baby, you know, this is their stuff, and they're nervous that they want to hand it over. And they're nervous that you're going to throw half of it away or whatever. So you have to empathize with them. And this may sound kind of silly, you know, but it really helps with your client engagement. You empathize with them. You understand their frustration, their being upset about having to even be in this position that they have to get rid of their stuff. Nurture. But clients may be afraid. Believe in yourself, and they will believe in you. They will then buy in. You need to get their buy-in. In other words, you need to by you establishing a rapport with your clients and patrons, they then will believe you. So when you say, you know, you've got 15 copies of this, we're going to need to get rid of this, they're going to say, okay. You know, they're not going to say, let's just put it in a different box in the corner. No, you know, that's okay. It's okay to let it go. Provide an end goal for them. Communicate that once their collection is processed, they'll know what we have. My favorite term is, right now you have a black hole. You don't know what you have. So let me help you understand what you have so that you can find it later. Ultimately, that's the goal anyway, right? Make sure I'm on the right page. Okay. I just wanted to talk briefly about a client I had, the Salvation Army. Salvation Army received a lot of slides, 65,573 slides. They had absolutely no idea what was on those slides, but they knew that they were sessions. They knew they needed to have them scanned. They knew they had to have them processed. They had no idea. What this started out was a simple migration project. And you know what, let me pause there and say, part of my job is really kind of twofold. I help Allied Vaughn with their clients with their migration needs, and then I help with consultation on the next step of their content, which is their metadata, tagging, informational needs like that. Now, that's not my specialty, but I help move them into this environment. My main goal in the beginning is to help them get their stuff digitized. So that being said, I'm going to jump ahead, but the slide collection was huge, and it started as a simple migration project. The collection needed to be digitized. There was 3 towers, approximately 37,000 images in one, 23 archival boxes containing sleeves or rows of images. So this was all, you know, she had this all organized in her head. The details were, again, just to digitize them, number them, label them. Pretty simple stuff, right? You think, you know, any production house can do that. But what happened is that in this client engagement, I was able to help her, because now she likes me, now she trusts me, and I was able to help her understand that in her lifetime, her and her worker that worked with her would never get all this content tagged properly and indexed in their system, not in her lifetime. And she believed me. So that's where this whole relationship building starts. She believed me. And so as a result of that, I know we're kind of jumping ahead, but as a result of that, we ended up doing a huge tagging and cataloging project that was not part of the original scope, but she understood that that ultimately was needed. So make recommendations. Because your client trusts you now, you can have those conversations about tagging. And these are terms that they may not know. Now, the Salvation Army client in particular, I was working with a librarian. I was working with a museum director. So she knew these terms. So she wasn't like just a corporate company, you know. So again, it's about learning your client and understanding their needs. I consider it a delicate dance. It's a delicate dance between educating your client, client engagement, and old-fashioned customer service. Be flexible, listen, and be engaged. Understand, ultimately, it brings you to understand what they need and help them get there. Summary is, knowing what the client wants is sometimes the tip of the iceberg. And so welcome to the Many Hats Club. We all talked about many hats, you know? So, you know, what starts out as one thing and you think, I got this, no big deal, it turns into something else, which is okay. You know, then you pass it on to that professional that understands that next step, so to speak. Thank you, and any questions? Yes, if that's what the client wants. A lot of times, more recently, our clients have analog stuff or the old stuff, and it's harder to find companies in southeastern Michigan that have these machines available. That's the first thing. Second thing is, again, because they're emotionally attached to their assets, they don't want to ship them off to China to have them digitized a lot cheaper. So that's the emotional connection. And then, just like with the Salvation Army project, if the client needs, so we digitize, we migrate, but if the client needs that second step, we also provide that service as well. Okay? Yeah, no doubt. Thank you.
I think it's really important for us to realize, too, that no matter which niche in information management you go into, you're in customer service. So a lot of the things she mentioned are things that we all have to tackle with being in the public life. So thank you to our panel. I'm so proud of all of our alumni and everything you guys are accomplishing, and it's so great to share it with folks that are graduating or some of our newer alums. So thank you so much. So we're gonna take a bit of a break, a 15-minute break in here, and then there'll be 2 more presentations for you folks, and then you guys are welcome to join us next door. So thanks everybody, and since we're getting out just a few minutes early, I'll be back at 1 to get started. Okay, thank you. I know, so many people told me that today.
Bye. Thank you. I enjoyed yours as well. It was a lot of